Hey everybody, Kneecap here. This is my top 5 things I like about World of Warcraft Legion so far. Coming in at number 5, we have Mythic Dungeons, and more specifically, Mythic Keystone Dungeons. Mythic Dungeons start out at 840 loot, which can of course scale up with the scaling system in World of Warcraft. After completing the Mythic Dungeon, you will be awarded a Mythic Keystone. You can take that Keystone to the assigned Mythic Dungeon and use it to unlock the Mythic Plus mode designated by that Keystone. If you're able to complete the Mythic Plus in the time allotted, you'll be awarded a chest of loot and spoils at the end, including higher level Mythic Keystones. If you complete it even faster, you can be awarded more chests of loot for your party to go through, and receive the spoil of your efforts. The best part about Mythic Dungeons to me is the ability to gear up and progress without raiding. While I personally love to raid, I understand that some people do not, or do not have the time to raid. Perhaps they just only joining a guild, and having set times they have to sign on to World of Warcraft. I understand all these concerns, and that these people comprise a very large portion of the WoW community. That's why I love that Mythic Keystone Dungeons give them an opportunity that player base has been lacking pretty much since the inception of World of Warcraft. For me specifically, I love the progression feel of Mythic Keystones, without having time issues that you may run into when raiding. I can go in with a group of friends, and we can just do one Mythic plus dungeon, or we can continue for as long as we like. It can turn into a 3-hour session, or it can last a half hour, and either way, it has the potential of being a rewarding gaming experience. All in all, this has been a tremendous addition to World of Warcraft. It allows the hardcore people to obtain more loot that they desire on non-raiding nights, while giving casual people a chance to keep up in gear somewhat at the same time. Another aspect that helps is that PvP-focused players can in fact obtain loot without having to raid, only needing a team of 5 to get them the eye level they need for their rated PvP content. I can't imagine much hate coming up towards Mythic Keystones, and none of that hate would ever be coming from me. Coming up at number 4, we have no flying in the Broken Isles. You may be thinking, that's not really a thing to have ranked, is it? But for me it is. Let me explain. I am indeed a lore nerd. I love reading the wikis about all the different characters, and I own many of the Warcraft books. When flying was first introduced, I loved it. It made my experience so much quicker and easier. But also back then, I wasn't as engrossed into the lore of the game. Now that I am, I have a totally different perspective. But remembering where I came from, I do understand those of you who wish you could just use your flying mount and complete your objectives quicker. This expansion especially has a ton of lore. There are so many characters of old sprinkled throughout, whether order halls, storyline, or random NPCs. If I were to only fly from objective to objective, I would have missed out on a ton of Easter eggs and fun things hidden all along the Broken Isles. Not to worry if you wish you could fly though, because it will eventually be introduced like it has in every other expansion. I personally hope that doesn't happen until the final patch though. Another great thing about not being able to fly is to take in the scenery. Sometimes we are so quick to level to gear to succeed, we do not take the time to smell the roses, in real life and in wildlife. I am someone who likes to appreciate the little things, and not being able to fly helps me do that. Because, don't get me wrong, if I did have the ability to fly, I would be using it. It would be silly not to. By not allowing flying, it is forcing us to appreciate the little things. While many people don't like to be forced to do things, in this case, I think it is towards the greater good. I do love my flying mounts, and by the time it is released, I'm sure I will be ready to use them. But, until that time, I will ride around on a riding-only mount, and take Flight Pass, looking for more hidden treasures and more adventures. Coming in at number 3, we have the return of Dalaran. Dalaran is probably my favorite main city of all time. Not only is it filled with lore, but it has an amazing setup and great look to it as well. Let's not kid ourselves, Warlords of Draenor was a huge dud in many ways, and most agreed that the worst thing was the garrison. While there are order halls which are similar to garrison and legion, you cannot do everything from them, so you are forced to mingle in the city somewhat. And the city of choice of course, is Dalaran. While it doesn't have an auction house yet, which I would like to see happen for everyone at some point besides just engineers, you can do everything else there, including portal or travel to your order hall directly. Of course, with Khadgar being our guide through this expansion, much like the last one, it makes total sense for us to be centered in Dalaran and the Kirin Tor, and I'm sure that will play into the storyline even more as we progress through the expansion. My favorite part of Dalaran is the profession sector in the city. There's a lot of hustle and bustle of people going in and out of different rooms, crafting and learning new recipes. I love that people can just walk into a shop with another character instead of having to portal to their garrison. It's much more lifelike and real to interact with people in a common city instead of going to their superhero garrison. Of course, another interesting thing about Dalaran is the new sewer. As anyone who played in Wrath knows, the sewer was always used as the perfect place to duel and show your mettle in PvP combat. Blizzard took this fact and ran with it. The new sewer is an all-out PvP brawl zone. In fact, it is basically its own zone. With sightless eye currency and its own separate Easter eggs, it's almost its own subzone, with more darkness and trickery than the above-ground Dalaran. All of these things continue to make Dalaran my favorite city, and I wouldn't mind if the Kirin Tor move it every single expansion. Coming in at number 2, we have World Quests. It's hard for me to not put World Quest number 1 because I absolutely love them. There are all kinds of World Quests and so many different options. You can do World Quests for gear, professions, reputation, achievements, gold, PvP, artifact power, and order resources. I'm a reputation hunter, so I tend to do more World Quests than maybe the typical person does, and so I will say certain ones have become repetitive. That's my only knock on them at all. If you only do a few every day, however, or just your emissary, it would take a long time for them to be repeating constantly. Speaking of emissary, I thought that was a great touch to the world questing system. Give people an extra incentive on top of the direct reward for doing their 4 world quests. And 4 was also a good number. It's not just 1 to get a big reward, but you also aren't doing 10 to 15 or more, like people were in other expansions. My favorite world quests to do are the danger ones. I love mini world boss aspect of the NPCs that are scattered throughout the Broken Isles, and that they only spawn when the world quest is active. Some of them, like Jorlag the Grave's Chill in Stormheim, even have cool effects like making it snow as he pats across the region. I also enjoy the easier version in the wanted quests. While these are all pretty much soloable, they can provide a little extra test to you in case they have a strong ability you have to counter. A lot of the more unique quests you do as leveling up are turned into world quests. A lot of these are easy, but remain fun because of the uniqueness of the quest itself. I also really love the idea of PvP world quests. Many of them actually in fact do not involve PvP at all, which is ironic, and it did seem odd at first, but it allows PvE players to get some honor talents while doing PvE content, just in case they're ambushed by the opposing faction while out and about, and they're not completely defenseless. In my top spot, we have my favorite thing, the Emerald Dream. Or the Emerald Nightmare, I'm sorry. I love almost everything about this raid. I love that Blizzard made the normal mode raid killable for casual guilds, like the one I'm in, and I love that Heroic is a nice little jump in difficulty from the normal mode, at least for my guild. For me, the best part is all the lore characters in the raid itself. Whether it's Malfurion, Xavius, or Ursoc, there's a ton of good lore in here. I like the design of it as well, and I like the different mechanics in the boss fights. A little of everything, even though there's just 7 bosses, and no really gimmicky fights in this raid either. As far as looks go, I guess I love that after you defeat Xavius, you get to go to the actual Emerald Dream. This is really neat, and something that a lot of players have been waiting a long time to see. My personal favorite fight is probably Cenarius. Not only are you fighting someone from the lore, but the fight itself is pretty neat, with a couple phases and a lot of different mechanics varying by which types of ads you let summon. My one knock on the trash is before Ursoc seems a little glitchy, at least in my experience, and the pulls are actually harder than the boss, which I never really like. All in all, it's a really good raid, especially for the first raid of an expansion. And I can't wait to see how the rest of the content turns out when it's released. Hopefully I can experience Mythic before that, though. Well guys, that's my personal top 5, of course, just purely my opinion, and I know there are a ton of other cool things as well. With that being said, If you want to leave your own personal top 5 down below, I would love to see what everyone else likes about Legion, based on your own personal playstyles and personalities. Also, if you want, you can leave your top 5 least favorite things. If I get enough comments about the least favorite, I'll do a top 5 video about that. I don't really have a top 5 least favorite things, so it would be based on suggestion alone.